You've made a mistake. Start from scratch. My manager tore up the document I had handed him right in front of me. He would hurl abusive language at me on a daily basis. I couldn't take it anymore and chose to resign. The manager himself planned to receive his severance pay early and is going to live a comfortable retirement life. I couldn't stand the perpetrator of harassment to live happily ever after. But I was not the only one who could not forgive him. My name is Keith. It's my first year in sales, but I'm already losing hope. When I was searching for a job in my senior year of college, I met Mr. Miller, a sales manager at a career fair where various companies gathered. You are suited for sales because you are very assertive, he said to me. I was so happy to hear the sales manager praise that I applied for the job, and the interview process went smoothly, and in no time, I was hired. However, when I started working at the company, I found that it was a company with terrible working conditions, where long working hours were the norm. Moreover, harassment from the boss was rampant. You're so incompetent. Just quit already. Mr. Miller abused the new employees, a side that he did not show at the career fair. I couldn't tolerate it, so I couldn't help but speak up. What you just said is harassment. I saw my colleague being cornered, so I just had to say it. After that, I started to be the target. By the way, the colleague I covered for quit after that. I'm going to make you quit just like him. The manager who declared harassment abuses me day after day. If you don't finish your work, you'll have to work on your days off. Make 100 sales calls a day. It was an everyday occurrence to be told to do something unreasonable like that. When I tried to ask for help, my seniors and peers turned a blind eye. As long as I'm their target, they wouldn't get harassed. They didn't want to get involved, so they just kept silent. There was no one here to help me. The only person who was there for me was Megan, a female employee in the accounting department. When Megan saw me being harshly scolded by the manager, she began to worry about me. She noticed the manager's brutal tone toward me. If you don't have anyone in the company you can talk to, how about talking to the Department of Labor? She gave me advice and encouraged me saying that. But at the time, I was mentally exhausted. I didn't even have the energy to consult with the Department of Labor. Megan continued to be very concerned about me, and we grew a relationship as we went out for dinner several times. We eventually started dating without telling the company. Even when work is hard, just having Megan there gives me the energy to go to work. It was fun to keep our relationship on the down low so that our co-workers didn't find out. Nonetheless, it didn't change my manager's attitude. Although I had the support of my girlfriend, I gradually became mentally drained. One day, I made a mistake in my paperwork. Turn it in first thing tomorrow morning. I was given the work at the end of my regular work day. I worked as hard as I can to finish it, so much that I had to catch the last train home. Mr. Miller checked the paperwork and said, You've made a mistake. Start from scratch, and tore up the documents in front of me. Moreover, he would shout, You're useless. You can't even make a simple document. You're fired. If I had been my usual self, I would have begged him and asked for another chance, but I couldn't stand it anymore. It was as if my body was telling me it was at its limit. Okay, I'll quit. My words caused a stir among the other employees, but Mr. Miller grinned and said, No company will hire somebody like you with no work history. You'll be unemployed for the rest of your life. I voluntarily resigned for personal reasons, but it was like I was backed into a corner and got fired. I was so frustrated that I cried out loud when I got home. I told my parents how I ended up quitting my job. They were furious with Mr. Miller. "I get a job, so you should come back." My father wanted me to go back to my hometown and get a job there. I had come to the city after college for my job. The career fair where I met Mr. Miller was local college students. I was happy and grateful for my father's offer, but I had Megan to think about. Couldn't come up with an answer on my own, so I decided to ask Megan for advice.
I think it's a good idea to stay with your family and take it easy for a while. Even if we'll be long distance, it doesn't mean we can't see each other.
And so, with Megan's words, I made up my mind to return to my hometown. My father introduced me to a new job at a company headquartered in the city. It is a relatively large company that is involved in a variety of businesses. I'll work in a small branch office, but if I work hard enough, I might be able to move to the head office. I promised Megan, saying, and make sure I get transferred to the head office. After 3 years, I was transferred to the head office in recognition of my request and my job performance. I guess it was the result of working harder than anyone else, because I didn't want my father, who introduced me to the company, to lose face. Work at the head office was going well. The quotas were fairly strict, but there were no bosses yelling at me like at my old job. At times like this, I wondered how Mr. Miller was doing. Megan was still working at the same place as before, but perhaps out of concern for me, the subject of him never came up. Is he still as he was? I asked Megan while we were having dinner together.
After you quit, another employee became a target, and he ended up quitting too. Mr. Miller's the kind of person who relieves stress by bullying younger employees,
Megan says with a sigh. When Megan found out about the harassment, she talked to her boss, the head of the accounting department. However, she was told that that's how young people learn how society works, and was given a lukewarm answer. She says she began to have doubts about a company that tolerates that kind of harassment.
I thought I couldn't go on like this, so I talked to my boss about it, but
as a result, she found that she couldn't rely on him. Megan began to think that she should find Mr. Miller's weak points by herself.
Even if I reported the harassment to the president, he probably wouldn't take it seriously. So I decided to get rid of the source of the problem, Mr. Miller. For the past 3 years since you moved back to your hometown, I've been following his every move. I never forgave the person who hurt my boyfriend, and never will. When I saw Megan smiling at me like that, I knew I couldn't go against her. And then Megan found Mr. Miller's weak point. What is that? I was surprised when I heard Megan's story. If what she said was true, I would be able to take him down. For the 3 years since I left, Megan had been trying to figure out how to corner him. She didn't talk to me about it because she thought it would bring back the trauma of the harassment. Megan's kindness warms my heart. At this time, I had no idea that a few days later, I would meet Mr. Miller himself. I was having a meeting with a senior co-worker in the lobby of the head office when I saw a familiar face. I excused myself to walk up to the man I recognized. My heart was pounding as I remember my traumas, but I couldn't help but call out to him. "Mr. Miller, right?" I say, from behind him, and told him my name. Mr. Miller remembered me and grinned. "Oh, you're the weakling who couldn't stand my guidance and run away. Are you here looking for a job in that suit? You don't belong here."
He made fun of me like that. Well, I was just in the middle of a meeting. "What can I do for you?" I didn't take his bait and gave him my sales smile. Then, Mr. Miller sensing the situation, gave me a disapproving look and said,
I'm here on a business meeting. It doesn't seem to be with the department to which you belong. It's a shame we can't work together,
he said, obviously not meaning it. I chuckled to myself. Then he starts boasting about his accomplishments, perhaps because I was his old subordinate and was even the one whom he harassed.
This business meeting is my last. I'm going to retire early and enjoy my retirement. And I'll be getting more than enough severance pay. It was worth working for the same company for decades. I guess this won't happen to you though, if you've been moving from one company to the next.
I knew it was a provocation, but I lost my temper. During the rough times I had to endure the harassment, I was so miserable seeing my girlfriend worried for me that there were times I wanted to disappear. However, the perpetrator, Mr. Miller, never showed any remorse for what he did. I couldn't help but feel angry at him. I felt ashamed of myself for causing trouble to Megan and my parents because of someone like him. It's good to hear you've worked so hard for decades, but no severance paid for you, I said in anger.
What?
Mr. Miller asked, confused.
What are you talking about? What are you going to do with my severance pay? What's more, how dare you to talk to me like that? Even though we don't have a boss-subordinate relationship, that's not the kind of language you use with your elders. I'm taking this matter up with your boss.
I interrupted him as he started lecturing me. Did you know that if you're found to have embezzled on the job, you won't get any severance pay?
What?
Mr. Miller, who had been babbling on and on until a few minutes ago, fell quiet. Paddling off business trip expenses, personal use of rewards earned from the corporate card. If you have accumulated this over the decades, it must be a considerable amount of money. If the president found out, you would not only lose his severance pay, but could even be dismissed before you're retired. As I spoke without hesitation, I noticed him turning pale. All of this was told to me by Megan. Megan had gone through all the receipts, credit card rewards history, and interviews with salespeople over the past few years. For example, he booked a bullet train ticket and submitted the receipt to accounting. Then, he would cancel the reservation, take the express bus, and put the difference into his pocket. It seems that he had been doing this kind of shady business for decades. The subordinate accompanying him wondered why he had to take the express bus, but was too afraid of him to say so. Also, by nature, corporate card rewards belong to the company. It is written in the company's regulations, and it is natural for managers to know this. However, he used the rewards for personal meals and trips. I don't know how long he had been embezzling, but from the look of his face, I can assume that he had been doing it for quite some time. Then he pulls me aside and takes me to a corner of the lobby.
How much do you want?
Suddenly, he pulled out his wallet. While I was surprised at his unexpected behavior, he quietly continued.
I don't care how you found out about it. Keep this to yourself. As long as you keep quiet, you can get money. It's a good deal, isn't it?
And then he tries to twist every bill from his wallet into my pocket. I don't want it. Why don't you just admit that you've done wrong? I said, pushing the money back, but it didn't resonate with him.
I'm not the fool who's going to confess when I am about to get my severance pay, okay? If it's not about the money, what is this about?
It was a complete coincidence that I ran into him here today. If he hadn't pissed me off, I would never have told him about his embezzlement. So, I didn't approach him with any purpose in mind. But the moment I saw him, my body automatically moved, and I think this is what I wanted to tell him. Apologize to me. Your harassment made me mentally ill, so I wanted you to apologize to me here, with sincerity, and swear to me that you will never harass anybody again." I'm sure he is very reluctant to apologize to someone of a lower rank, a former subordinate. But he seemed to realize that if he didn't apologize, I would expose his embezzlement. He glared at me and clenched his fist. Then he straightened his posture and bowed his head at the right angle.
"I am very sorry that my behavior made you feel uncomfortable. I will never do anything that could be perceived as harassment again."
As one would expect from a sales manager, his apology was perfect. He must have been doing this to his clients for decades. I thought to myself as he said this with such grace that I felt moved. However, I said to him, "The embezzlement has nothing to do with the harassment. I'm sure the accounting staff must have reported it to the president by now."
"What? You deceived me."
The angry manager stormed at me. He looks as if he's about to punch me in the face. At that moment, his phone rings. From the way he talked, I knew it was the president of the company. He must have been told to return to the office immediately.
"I've been out of the loop for so many years. Why now?"
Mr. Miller buried his head in his hands. A brilliant accounting staff found out through sheer persistence. Isn't that amazing? She's my girlfriend, you know. I chuckled, and the manager looked like he wanted to say something, but then he ran off. I left the meeting in the middle, so I apologized to my senior and told him what had happened. He advised me to sue him now if I had any evidence of the harassment. I had plenty of evidence. Emails containing abusive comments from Mr. Miller and the diary I kept every day. At the time, I was too weak to do anything and cried myself to sleep, but now I have the energy to fight against him. I decided to file a lawsuit and demand compensation. In the evening, I got a call from Megan, who was working overtime. Megan had been present at the meeting to talk with the president and Mr. Miller, as the person who had found the embezzlement.
At first, he flat out denied it. He said that a former employee who had a grudge against him had used his girlfriend to make up the story. But when I confronted him with the evidence, he cried and got down on his knees to the president. The president was furious with him for taking advantage of his position and betraying the company for so many years. He told the general manager that he would proceed with the dismissal on the spot. The company's internal rules also stated that severance pay will not be paid to employees who are dismissed on disciplinary grounds. The general manager is 55 years old and is being forced out of the company without severance pay. I think a full-scale investigation is about to begin. There's just one thing that bothers me. Mr. Miller was glaring at me and mounted, "I'll get you for this," as he left. I think he went home because he was ordered to stay home for a while.
Megan's thin voice shows that she fears his recrimination. I told her I'd pick her up and sprinted out of the office. And when I arrived at my former workplace, I found Mr. Miller loitering on the premises. Then, at the moment, Megan came out. Maybe she knew I was coming and decided to wait outside. Upon spotting Megan, Mr. Miller scurried up to her and swung down the bag he was carrying.
"Ah!"
Megan lets out a short scream as she is attacked by him. Oh, I slipped in between Megan and Mr. Miller in the nick of time, and the bag hit me directly on the head. He then tries to run away in a panic.
"Someone, please, help!"
Megan yells for help, and the two men walking nearby seize him.
"Stop it! Who do you think I am?"
Megan called the police with trembling hands as Mr. Miller was making a scene. Onlookers gathered at the office of my former workplace, which stands along the main street.
"My life is over,"
he shouts, not caring that the onlookers are taking videos of him. There are tears in his eyes, but I don't feel sorry for him. I have no sympathy for a man attacking an employee who accused him of his wrongdoing. I'm sure this incident was caught on security cameras. I'm going to charge you a fee along with a harassment compensation.
Ah,
Mr. Miller groaned and then became quiet. He was taken to the police station and Megan and I explained the situation, and so ended this long day. After that, the manager was fired from embezzling money and committing violent acts, and of course, the severance pay we had hoped for was zero.
I had promised to pay my grandson's education with my severance pay.
Megan heard him crying to the president. As a result of our investigation, the amount of money accumulated over the decades is in the tens of thousands of dollars. He would have to pay back all the money he embezzled. The alimony I had claimed had also been paid, so his family's finances must be a mess. I'm sure he had some trouble within his family. There is a strong possibility that his wife has asked him for a divorce. Having lost everything, he is sure to lead a miserable life. Megan resigned for her job after the incident. She is afraid of being attacked again.
Well, I guess I'm unemployed now.
Megan says with a small smile. It's okay, I'll protect you from now on. So let's get married, I say as I hand her the ring. Megan is laughing and crying with happiness. I'm going to do whatever it takes to protect her.